The early months of the First World War exposed something that honestly doesn't get talked about enough. Europe was just not prepared to feed itself during a total industrial war. Entire regions suddenly found themselves cut off from trade, losing their working-age men and facing collapsing food supplies. Yet scattered across the continent were villages that not only survived but actually stabilized their food systems through methods that were old, overlooked or, rediscovered under pressure. For serious historians and survival-minded thinkers, these aren't just quaint stories. They're really hard-earned lessons forged in desperation. Before we dive into these 7 shocking First World War farming secrets, it's worth remembering that these communities weren't trying to be innovative. They were simply trying to stay alive. And, well, the choices they made carry a weight that still matters today. If you're here on Echoes of Survival to understand how past societies stayed resilient, this is honestly one of the most instructive chapters you can study. So, let's get into what these people actually did, how it worked, and, well, how it can be applied today in real survival or homestead conditions. The first overlooked secret is how villages increase food output without expanding land by mastering intensive bio-waste fertilization. With chemical fertilizers diverted to the war industry, farms in France, Belgium and parts of Eastern Europe returned to closed-loop nutrient cycles using human waste, livestock bedding, ash and composted weeds. This wasn't primitive, it was calculated. By layering organic refuse through controlled composting pits and turning them weekly, some villages increased yields by as much as 1/3. The takeaway today is simple. Nutrient recycling isn't symbolic environmentalism. It's what kept people from starving when imports stopped. The second secret was the way women-led farming cooperatives restructured labour with military precision after men were drafted. Across Europe, women reorganised farm schedules around strict rotation, shared work brigades and community-managed tool pools. These cooperatives measured work output, redistributed labour to the elderly and teenagers, and eliminated redundancies that had existed for generations. This wasn't improvisation, it was logistical innovation born out of necessity. So, the practical application today is recognising that food resilience depends on labour organisation as much as soil quality. The third secret came from the strategic shift toward short maturity crops that guaranteed calories faster. Villages began planting fast turnover staples like barley, buckwheat, turnips and early potatoes. These crops filled food gaps when traditional harvests were months away. This wasn't merely smart, it was life-saving. In a crisis, the entire cycle of food security changes, and World War I farmers learned to prioritize crops that returned calories every 6 to 8 weeks. A modern survivalist can, integrate this by maintaining emergency beds for fast maturity varieties, rotating them in small patches, and, keeping seed stock ready for rapid deployment. The fourth secret was the return to multi-species grazing to regenerate fields without buying feed. Instead of relying on imported fodder, many villages revived older techniques of rotating goats, sheep and cattle across the same fields. Each species contributed differently to soil health. Goats cleared brush, sheep trimmed grass evenly, and cattle provided heavier manure. This synergy created a self-sustaining nutrient cycle that, really boosted soil recovery in the absence of fertilizer. Anyone maintaining land today can take this principle and scale it. The fifth secret was the deliberate cultivation of war gardens inside village limits to cut transportation time and, prevent spoilage. The concept often gets reduced to propaganda posters, but these gardens were actually highly strategic. Villagers planted high-density rows close to kitchens, reducing waste, keeping food guarded, and freeing distant fields for grain production. This adjustment meant more calories stayed within walking distance, and less effort was spent hauling produce. To apply this today, keep high-consumption vegetables, like leafy greens, onions and herbs, near living quarters while reserving distant plots for bulk staples. The sixth secret was the practice of community-level food rationing before governments enforced it. Long before official ration cards appeared, many villages set up self-regulated distribution councils that monitored harvests, grain storage and consumption. These groups prevented hoarding, stabilized shortages and protected seed reserves. Their decisions were sometimes harsh, but, necessary. These days, applying food rationing doesn't require, the kind of wartime desperation folks once faced. It simply means managing community or family food stores with a bit of discipline, tracking inventory carefully, and making sure seeds are preserved each year. The seventh and, perhaps most surprising secret was the revival of ancient preservation techniques that actually outperformed industrial methods. Fermentation, root cellaring, cold smoking and ash packing were reintroduced, not because they were nostalgic, but because they really worked when modern systems collapsed. Applying this today means, mastering low-tech preservation, like storing root crops in insulated bins, fermenting vegetables with natural brine, and smoking meat with hard wood. These aren't just old-fashioned, they're proven survival assets. History rewards anyone who studies it seriously, and these World War I farming secrets show exactly how communities stayed alive when everything else failed. If you want more deep, practical history like this, subscribe to Echoes of Survival and, share this with someone who values real knowledge from the past.